Hey everybody, it's Book of Catherine. Hi Taz. Hope you're doing well. So this is now what my husband has to wake up to. Because I wake up earlier than him from the pain. It used to be I wake up later from him from the pain. Now I wake up earlier from him from the pain. So this is now an example of what my husband wakes up to in the morning. Hey baby. Yeah baby. You know that Taj Mahal? I try to wait until he's like somewhat awake or whatever. You know what I mean? I really try to wait. Thankfully, he loves hearing my thoughts. Thank goodness. But like, at least my friends get to wait till later in the day. My husband gets hit with it like straight up. First thing in the morning. Nice, bright and early at 6 a.m., right? This is what he gets to hear. So, hey baby, you know the Taj Mahal? Yeah? Yeah, the Taj Mahal, take that and like times it by 4. Like times it by 4 and put that in like Brighton. Like Brighton, the little UK place. You know how all those Victorian novels and all those Victorian dramas that we hear, like Pride and Prejudice, and they always want to go to Brighton. He's like, yeah. It's like, yeah, that's because there's a royal palace in Brighton that looks like India. It looks like the Taj Mahal that King George III built. And he's like, what? I'm like, oh yeah. King George III built it right after he lost America. As if to say, who needs America? I've got all of India. Because after all, Elizabeth I started the East India Trading Company, right? But at least there were royal court investors in that. Like, at least there were other bankers involved in that. At least there were others involved in that had some private interest in it. Because other people, look, like, she needed to get other people from other countries to go in on it with her, right? And, like, go in and put their life in the line and go out there and settle it. Like, settle it and settle the land out in these and, like, conquer it and everything like that. You know, because Britain was just this big. She needed people to go down there and settle the whole thing. So she had people investing in it, right? East India Trading Company. But, oh, guess what else I found this morning? Queen Victoria was so smart. Right before she's named Empress of India, right before she has Parliament turn over the East India Trading Company fully, the entire company over fully underneath the crown, making it sound like the crown never had any involvement in it, never said that they were the one that financed it in the very beginning. They were the ones with the idea and actually chartered it. Queen Victoria actually sold that palace in Brighton off in 1850. 1853 is when they gave everything back to her. She had Parliament sell everything to her. She's like, I'll take it for the people, since the East India Trade Company has so much slavery and so much injustice. Because, you know, she just sold it so that everyone saw that the queen she was so good at the queen. These guys, the Pope and the monarchy, are the best politicians I've ever seen. And Queen Victoria was like the boss. And, you know, King George III wasn't. He was impetulant, just kind of stomped his foot. Actually, no, I take that back. I learned some other things about George III today. So not only does Queen Victoria go ahead and turn that palace back over to the Parliament, turn the palace back over and make it kind of like a museum in 1850, only to then, so that, you know, there's no sign that the royal family has any ownership of India. Like, that entire thing looks like India, the Taj Mahal. Look it up, the Royal Pavilion. However, it's still called the Royal Pavilion. They say they sold it. They keep saying things like that. We sold it, but yet, look at that. Look at what the name still is. The Royal Pavilion. The royal thing. Now it's getting refurbishment. Guess what else I found out this morning? Now that the people's vote is being completely ignored, now that Parliament is showing everyone, hey, we can ignore the people's vote, and now that you, Great Britain, now that you, I guess because Nigel Farage has a little political movement that's going around and letting you do rallies and letting you get you all your anger out, letting you get together and drink away all your woes instead of having you rally at your actual Parliament's door like you should be, storming down not getting a new party. You should be rallying at your actual door. How ineffectual is it to have a third party that has no representation in Parliament? Congratulations, you just made yourself completely ineffectual. Great job. Great job. You just made yourself very powerful at the EU that you said you wanted to make yourself not a part of. Unbelievable. You made yourself, it's so ironic, they must be laughing. They must be laughing at the fact that all the people who didn't want to be in the EU now have a huge party at the EU. Congratulations. But no representation in Parliament. In fact, so little representation in Parliament that guess what? $369 million is going to refurbish Buckingham Palace. Refurbish it. That place is already the house. It doesn't need refurbishing. Who's doing that? And what are they doing it with? Taxes. They are actually taxing the British taxpayer. They are using taxpayer funds to redo their palaces. That tells you the monarchy is back in effect. They have so many holdings. They have so many jewels. They have BASF. Look into it. They have BASF. They have climate change. All their climate change companies. All their climate change holdings. Bayer. Look into their German holdings. They're totally invested in German industries. Notice that they are supporting the JCPOA. They're backing Germany. They're backing Iran. They're backing China. They just went ahead and supported through Merkel. They just put $100 billion of investment into China during the trade war. They're sticking with the EU. Do you know how the UK monarchy are the 1%? Their weddings haven't hurt. No. Why don't you take a look at the royal court to see how well they're doing? Members of the royal court are less rich than the actual members of the royal family, right? Members of the royal court are like Sir Richard Branson. Sir Richard Branson of Virgin Airlines, who owns Virgin Islands. He's a member of the royal court who has members of the royal family come to his daughter's wedding to give an actual pronouncement, like to actually bless the wedding, so that it actually happens and they're members of the royal court in the wedding, in the royal family's eyes. And Richard Branson was like, oh, Princess Diana actually saved the royal monarchy and made sure that Britain wasn't a republic. When members of the royal court who have titles like Lord and Lady are saying that Britain isn't a republic, it's not a republic, and I don't see the British people fighting back at all. They are poor. They know they don't have a vote, and now the monarchy is spending their tax money. That's why they can't get out of the BBC taxes. They don't want the BBC. They don't want to pay into it, and they're like, we have to pay anyway, and cops are coming to their door. Those are royal cops. Royal cops. That's the Queen's Army. We've returned to the days of frickin' Robin Hood. There's blood in the streets again. That tells you what a good monarchy you have. And now they're sending down Royal Navy ships down. Anyway, I'm getting off on something. So let me get back to this morning's research. Then I find out, let's see, what else did I find out? Then I find out George III, pretty much during his reign, founded the British Museum, because it looks like his dad, George II, died in 1751. And Parliament, which was formed in 1701, were given their powers in 1701, was like, oh, our active succession, we don't want any young kings. And so they were like, you can't become king when he was like 13 years old. They're like, you're going to have to wait till 1760. And, you know, George III didn't like that very much. He didn't like the people telling him he didn't have the right to be king. And so he spent those years studying the heck out of the law. And he found out, oh, under the law, under my previous predecessors, King Henry, turns out Parliament doesn't have any power whatsoever. And he used that. He used that tyranny. He used that tyranny to his fullest. And that's why he was a tyrant king. Because he studied the heck out, because they didn't let him ascend to the throne when he was 13 years old. And you know, at 13 years old, you think you know everything. And he studied the heck out of the law. He was able to throw out leaders of Parliament. He was able to get laws passed. For example, his kids were getting married behind his back. They were getting married for love because things were free and people were becoming thinking for themselves. And he was like, I don't think so. He had Parliament pass an act saying that the king has to approve of every marriage of royal citizens. So no one can get married unless the king approves in the royal court. Oh yeah, Parliament would have passed that if there was an actual Parliament. Now pay very, very close attention. Every single act of Parliament goes the king's way. And now we go ahead and look online. Now that you know that the monarchy is the 1%, the online astroturf isn't left. There is no such thing as left online. Silicon Valley isn't left. Google isn't left. Go on Google and you will be amazed at how you always know, and Wikipedia, you will be amazed. Wikipedia always says these things like with every king and everything, they'll always say this is who their predecessor were, or this is their successor was. Unless it's history they don't want you to know. The royal family doesn't want you to know. Then suddenly the title of like predecessor or successor will suddenly mysteriously just be gone. They won't mention who's predecessor or successor. And that happened with George II and George III. George II, his successor was not mentioned, and George III, his predecessor, wasn't mentioned. Missing from both their Wikipedia pages. Just gone. You can find it later, going into it. You can dig and find out who their predecessor and successors were, which was them. There was no king in. It was just amazing. The true king, they were a predecessor. Parliament tried to get involved. And King George III, I still remember it, studying it, and I was growing up, they called it the Child King, because King George III was a child king. And let me tell you, by the way, his dad, King George II, was the King of Hanover, the prefect of the Holy Roman Empire of Germany. And guess what? If George III didn't become the same thing, Holy Roman Emperor, Empire. Yeah, they're Protestant, the King of England. And he ended up becoming King of Hanover. Did you know George III was like the first king of England in 130 years to actually be born in England? They were all born in Germany. So that's why it's such a big thing that the president said yesterday in his speech, the UK and Germany need to step up. He said those two in succession on purpose. Started the UK and Germany. They are they're backing Iran. It's not an accident. And I don't think World War I and World War II, like that, did a great job of two things. Making BASF grow stronger, expanding the military empire, and wiping out American revolutionary families. There aren't that many of those families left anymore. The ones who remembered what it was like to have a tyrant king. And that's why when you go online today, which I did this morning, you will find websites that say so many nice things about King George III. You will find ones that say that he was such an amazing king, that he was the best of all the Hanoverian rulers, the best. Not the one that lost America, not the one that built a palace, not the one that went and started freaking Australia, another empire in Australia, not the one that claimed that they owned India, not the one that started the British Museum and started collecting things in the British Museum, not that guy. Not the one that pretty much took over Parliament and said, you have no power here. Oh, no, not him. He was the best of all the kings. He didn't have a temper. He didn't get the Pope's blessing, and the Pope that said it was a tyranny that then, oh yeah. And then you get other websites that say, oh, he said it's best of the Hanoverian kings because he was so good about working with Parliament and actually taking charge of it. He was a leader in Parliament and showing Parliament how to lead. He studied so well. It said that he studied so well when he was young and in his teenage years. He studied the law so well that he knew exactly how to rule Parliament. That's what those websites say. He just ruled Parliament and knew how to rule, and he was actually knew his rights so well that he knew how to rule within his rights the American colonies and the British Parliament with exactly within his rights. He knew exactly what his rights were. You're right. He knew exactly what his rights were. He was the monarch. He had every right in the world, God's right. No one else had a right but him to rule. His words was God's words amongst all his people and amongst all his empire. Yeah, he knew he had that right. You're right. He studied up and he took that right and he demanded it. Yep, he was fully within his rights, according to what his beliefs are, his belief system, which was the Catholicism belief system, not Protestantism. Anyway, which is why the American revolutionaries fought back and said they were Protestants, because they said that we believe God speaks directly to us through the Holy Spirit, and God can tell us how to rule ourselves. We can hear God's will for ourselves. No one has any clue how deeply steeped Christianity was in the last 2,000 years of Western civilization. Like, it has been so completely wiped out by the internet and by the universities and just whoosh, and yet the monarchies are completely based their right to rule on it. They completely base their entire right to rule and take all their taxes based upon the Christianity. And so does the Pope, on all the right to tax you and take their tithing, and it's incredible. Anyway, so, and the right to have the British Museum, and the right to have the royal palaces that they do, all of that, and for Rome to have all of Egypt's obelisks. They all say they own that by the right of God speaking through them and not through the people, not through the Holy Spirit, which, by the way, is something Caesar Augustus said, the Roman Empire said. That is not something Jesus Christ actually taught. So that can't be Christianity. Seems to me that the monarchs are carrying on the holy, not the holy, just the Roman Empire. Sounds to me like a continuation of Rome. Actually, now that I talk it out, oh crap, what did I just say? Oh, did I just say the monarchs are just governorships of Rome? They are. They actually teach. That's what Caesar said. It was that Rome speaks through me. Oh, that's the other thing I learned, was that George the Fourth actually dressed and had portraits done as Caesar. He looked exactly like, he looked like Napoleon Bonaparte, but he wore a crown like Caesar. Isn't that interesting? And he liked to reside at the royal palace that looked just like India, that Queen Victoria was so quick to get rid of so that she could be named empress. And also, if there was really a parliament, do you think that a parliament would pass an act that said that she would have to be named by every person in her presence, actually verbally named by her title as Empress of India? That was Parliament passed that while she was queen? Yeah, that sounds like a people's parliament representing the people. Unbelievable. They all say these parliament passed for the queen, for the queen, for the king, it's absolutely incredible. Now there's American revolutionary sites that say that King George III actually did whatever Parliament said. And Parliament just happened to be really nice to the king. But the King, George III, was actually a child and actually knew nothing of the ways of the world and did whatever Parliament said. And I'm like, this monarchy has their hooks in everywhere. So if you're an American going to American Revolutionary site, it's like the monarchy has no power. But if you're not, and you're looking up and you love the monarchy and you're looking up the monarchy, it says King George was amazing and Americans are bad. It is absolutely incredible. These people have their tentacles everywhere. Gosh, and isn't that what 007 said? And isn't it what said? I wonder if it's like 007 understands that the monarchy has turned on its people. You know, they're starting to understand that Rome exists, a whole new world. Rome is back. And isn't that interesting what Revelation said? It said the beast everyone thought was dead is back, and everyone will follow it. And isn't that what they do? They follow the Pope in Mass. They follow Queen Elizabeth in Mass. And they follow both Mass, and they follow Merkel in Mass. And all three represent the Roman Empire of today. And just people follow blindly. All the way to the point that 3 terrorist leaders of terrorism, 100 terrorism cells have been destroyed. Countless bloodshed of countless minorities across the world. And our U.S. press, and in fact the entire global press, treats Americans and those who did it as the infidels. Isn't that incredible? That's one heck of an empire. And I find it interesting that the old texts written so long ago, back in 70 AD, actually seem to say that this would happen. Fascinating. And that's what my husband had to wake up to this morning. Just another morning in the Book of Catherine household. Bye.